lot of things came out, but one of the things that was really important was the idea of bliss. Now, we haven't talked about bliss in a long time. It's been a long time since we talked about bliss. So let's talk about bliss some more. We've always told you that bliss is a word that we don't like, that we never had a better word for it. We've also always told you that bliss is a state with no opposite. At the time we said that, we imagined Veronica wasn't alone in imagining that bliss, being a state with no opposite, sort of meant bunnies and rainbows all the time. You know, like everything's blissy, which is why we didn't like that word in the first place, but we chose it anyway. And the idea being that on the other side of your big thing might have been bliss, right? Yeah? Okay, good. We're just checking that Veronica wasn't the only one who sort of fell for that idea. Because you live in duality, there's this version of you that says, this challenge growth pushing all the time is hard. Over there, on the other side of the mountains of my familiar suffering and my big thing and my core emotion and all this other stuff we learn about, over there, that must be bliss. And bliss being a state with no opposite means that's happy, because that would be no opposite is happy. Let's just fix that right now. Bliss isn't happy. Doesn't mean it's sad either. What bliss is a non-duality state. That's the important part of bliss as a state with no opposite, is it's a state with no opposite part, right? That was the important part, not what you imagined bliss to be. And when you exist in a state with no opposite, that means you are not in duality anymore. Now, we've been talking around the edges of living a non-dualistic life for a while, but it's time to up our game a little bit here, folks. What does it mean to live in a non-dualistic environment? It means that whatever you are experiencing is your first choice. You see, this is how first choice and bliss and a state with no opposite all go together. Whatever comes to you, when you don't have another preference, when you don't want it to go away, when you want this to be here because it's the perfect thing for you, which you can own because you create your reality and you're in collaboration with your soul, and you know it wouldn't be happening unless it were happening for a reason, you can own that it's your first choice. Right? We talked about this is my first choice. That is a state with no opposite. That's the closest you can come to not being in duality. We should say it a different way. That is when you are not in duality. You live in a dualistic world. Up, down, black, white, on, off, right? Dead, alive. It's very, very, very hard to break out of all duality. However, this is the place where you crack the shell of it. When it comes at you, you say, this is my first choice. This is my choiceless choice. We've talked about that. This is here for a reason. Now, you interact with it, of course, and maybe it's something that you really don't like, but you don't not like it in a way that says, oh God, it has to go away. You don't like it in a way that says, I'm going to learn as much as I can about you as fast as possible because I don't want to dally here. And even that you'll let go of eventually. Right now, it might still be hard to own that. But this is here, and my interaction with it as an embracing of it gives me a state with no opposite. And that becomes a state that we labeled bliss that isn't happy, happy, joy, joy, bunnies and rainbows, but it is a state that says, I am in right alignment with this. I am doing right action. I am in appropriateness. I'm in the place I'm meant to be, right? The place I'm meant to be is here, attending to this. And you don't shy from it. You take that warrior stance. You know how the warrior talks about pulling your triggers close like a lover? Bring it very close to you so that it can't get away. Or we've said it's like a washcloth that you wring every drop out of. Because you don't want it to go any other place than close enough to you that you get everything it has to offer you. Now, if this is something yummy, like brownies or your lover or, a big fat payday, something like that, it's much easier for you guys to say, come close to me, bring me your brownies, money, and sex, right? That's like very close to me right here, right? Now on this side, right? So the whole thing, right? Get the whole thing. Eat brownies, roll around in money, and have sex on it, right? Perfect. You're like, choiceless choice! Woohoo! No problem. Then something happens that is not as easily preferred. And in that not as easily preferred place, when you reject it, you're rejecting yourself right into duality. Because that thing, you've all done it, we know you have, where something that comes up that you would reject if you could, but you can't, turns out to be one of your greatest growth places, greatest teachers, we don't like the word lessons, but that's how most people say it. That turned out to be my greatest lesson ever. This is really loud when someone you care about deeply is dying and you think, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. But through the process of it, you come to know yourself in such a profound way, right? That's a loud example. And even sometimes financial crisis, you can be like, but something in that place gives you a new part of yourself that you didn't have before. When you reject these experiences, you reject into duality. And we're trying to get you out of duality. We're also trying to get you connected to your soul's perspective. And your soul's perspective is in the things that seem yay, money, sex, and brownies, and also in the things like your parent dying. Your soul's perspective is there for both ways. And you want to make access points to your soul's perspective even when you're having a hard time. Now, this isn't easy. Veronica has a hard time talking to us. That one time, she was in Napa. She was lost. Everyone was like, well, why didn't you have Elohim give you directions? She's like, I had to pee so bad. I couldn't think of anything but needing to pee. She couldn't hear us because she just was overwhelmed with body sensations. When you really got to go, like, it's not even funny, like you're thinking about going in a bush on the side of the freeway, that kind of go, it's hard to hear us. And she's got a lot of practice at hearing us. So we get it, that when it's hard, it can be hard to connect with your soul's perspective too. But if you don't practice, you'll never be able to do it, right? Now, why we have the note? Because we haven't talked to you guys about the levels in a really long time. And we want to talk about the levels with the awareness that you have now about what we just said about bliss and what we've talked about being past your big thing.